Greetings, my friends. An essential part of any spiritual quest is starting to question facts. The world around us appears in a certain way, and much of the world that we experience as real is the world that we have been told exists. An example would be a tree, and as a child we learn that a tree is this thing right here. We might draw a picture of it and have the parts of it explained to us. But no one ever tells us that when we get down into the roots, things get a little more fuzzy and vague. In fact, we're not quite sure where the tree ends and other things begin. And trees seem to be tied into other trees. In fact, some trees, like aspens, are actually clones of each other, and what appears to be a whole bunch of single individual trees is actually one living organism. Today, I'm going to share an example, probably two examples, of places where if we look at the facts and we question them, we start to see that there's more to the story than we thought. My name is Kenton Whitman, and I believe in you. The reason this is so fascinating is because it can lead our minds down the rabbit hole, essentially. If we're accepting the world that has been explained to us, then things are very clear-cut. Everything is nicely defined and measured. And as long as we don't look too closely, those measurements will hold up, and we can go through life living by those measurements. But once we start to question those definitions and look a little bit closer, we find that things are fuzzy. As things begin to get fuzzy, then we start to question some basic elements about life. We might even start to question some things like individuality. As we do that, our mind begins to open up into new dimensions, and that's why this is key to a spiritual quest. Whether our spiritual quest takes a scientific flavor, where we're trying to see what's really behind this tree and what makes it flow, what makes it move and grow. Or we are trying to engage with God more deeply or the universe more deeply. Breaking down those barriers and questioning those barriers really opens up doors. The first example I'm going to use today is the sun. The sun, says Google, is 1,391,400 kilometers in diameter. That's about 864,000, well actually 575.9 miles is what Google tells us. Here we have a clear measurement. We know exactly how big the sun is. We can walk away with that information, feel secure, or we can look a little bit more carefully. What happens when we look? Well, we find that the sun is not this smooth surface, right? It's bubbling and gurgling. We call these flares, we call these prominences, and these can be, 30, as far out as 30 Earths stacked onto each other or more. Obviously, the sun is changing its shape constantly. So to give it down to 0.9 of a mile without saying, well, this is a very inaccurate measurement, well, it's doing us a disservice. And that, again, it's luring our mind into a fact and teaching us not to observe things more closely. When there's an eclipse, if you've ever seen an eclipse, suddenly we notice, wait, there's that part of the sun that everybody's talking about, but then there's this big thing around it. Scientists call it the corona. And this extends for millions of kilometers out into space. Now we have to stop and ponder. See, the part of the sun that we're seeing with our naked eye is called the photosphere. And that's just this outer layer that we're seeing. That's, of course, shifting and changing. And that's the measurement that they're usually using to try to measure the diameter of the sun. But what we're seeing is something that we might call sensory bias. just because our eyes see only a very limited amount of light, we've chosen to put the line that we draw around the sun around the photosphere, that part that we can see under normal conditions. Now, when that eclipse happens, we suddenly see, wait, the sun seems to expand way further out into space than we've been led to believe. And we can actually see this with our naked eye under the right conditions. So why don't we call that the sun? Look more closely, and the sun is, because we're talking about electromagnetic radiation, right? We can see a little sliver of that we call visible light. That's the photosphere. We get to see more when there's that eclipse. But there's all kinds of this radiation. Radio waves, infrared, ultraviolet, that are being sent out into space in all directions. Is that part of the sun? Basically, we're looking at different electromagnetic forces here, and we're just drawing a line based on our sensory bias. If we're going to extend out and say even that the visible light is part of the sun, where does a photon, as it's coming out of the sun, where does it cease to be the sun? Because we know we can look up at stars that are very, very, very far away, and the photons that came from that star are hitting our eyes. So, are those suns, are those stars extending all the way here to Earth? There's not a right or wrong answer. The point is to question the facts, to think about it for ourselves. How does sensory bias play into this? What does it mean that we have accepted a fact without really having looked at it more carefully? My second example, Lake Superior. This lake is very dear to my heart. I go up there often. It's not far from the Rewald University campus. If you go onto Wikipedia, you will get the shore length of Lake Superior. And they give that as 1,729 miles, which is 2,783 kilometers. Wikipedia has a sense to say, in a little footnote, that this measurement is not exact. And that's always a good thing to see. It was actually the author Stephen Buhner who first pointed this one out to me, and I've just loved it. So when we're talking about a shoreline, Lake Superior, we have this clean number, pretty clean according to Wikipedia, but that line is based on kind of a straight line that's drawn around the lake. Now, if I stand here on the lake and you stand 30 feet down on the lake and we take a measurement, we're going to get a 30-foot measurement of shoreline. And that's going to seem really, really clean. But if we stop and we look, we're going to say, well, actually the shoreline is squiggly. It's coming up along the rocks here, and we'd better redo our measurement and follow the squiggles because the shoreline is actually where the water touches the shore. Suddenly that 30 feet has extended to 90 feet. Wow. So should we take that original measurement of 2,783 kilometers and triple it? Maybe. But wait, it's more confusing. The waves are coming in and out. There's always waves on this lake, almost always. And as those waves come in, they are dramatically changing the lines. They're flowing up between the rocks, and that's all shifting. So now we'd have to freeze frame time in order to get a measurement. Of course, what we're going to do here is we're going to give up because taking the actual measurement is impossible. So we're just going to say, let's take an average. There's our established fact. We don't have to think about it any further or take it any further than that. Life is full of these things where we have defined an object and it seems clear-cut until we look more carefully. These games, if we start playing these thinking games, they're going to open up the world. In the comments below, please share any other places where you can see that there's a clear definition that's given to us by the world, or that you've accepted or we've accepted. And then look a little bit more deeply into it and share where you have seen that those boundary lines that we draw are not quite so clear. We can all learn from each other's insight and wisdom. Thank you, my friends. Can't wait to read the comments.